Daughter of the earth, listen. When you let go, the universe begins to align. If you are here, you may be tired of chasing something that seems to be running away from you. Perhaps your soul has loved so much that it has forgotten itself. And now, with teary eyes, you begin to wonder, is it really worth continuing to wait for someone who doesn't move in your direction? If you feel like you are living a silent farewell, or that the silence of your twin flame is destroying you inside, this video was made for you. But don't worry. What seems like the end today may just be the turning point. There is a spiritual secret hidden in the moment when a woman decides to let go of her twin flame. And this secret, when revealed, changes everything. In this space, you will not be judged. Here, your pain is understood and treated with respect. Let's dive together into something deep, true, and transformative. If this theme has touched you, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Today, we are going to talk about the moment when a woman says, enough, about the silent instant when even while still loving, she chooses to let go, about what happens in the spiritual background when you stop fighting for what seemed written in the stars. And the most surprising part? It's in this moment that everything starts to align. There comes a moment in the journey of the awakened woman when something inside her simply falls silent. It is no longer the loud crying, nor the outrage, nor the repetitive questioning. It is a different silence, a silence that comes from a soul tired of trying to understand what has no answer, a silence that carries the strength of one who, even on their knees, chooses to stop begging for crumbs of attention, presence, and love. And perhaps you are exactly at that point now. Perhaps you were the one who saw signs, numbers, synchronicities, dreams, intuitions. The one who believed with all her heart that there was indeed a divine purpose in meeting her twin flame. You felt that bond was different from all you had ever experienced. It was as if the very heavens had bowed to make that meeting happen. But gradually, the magic turned into silence. The connection became doubt, and what seemed like a union of souls began to feel more like abandonment. His absence became a weight in your days. The emotional distance transformed your chest into a battleground between what you feel and what reality shows you. You still love, but you are questioning how long you will endure loving alone. And that's where the question starts to arise. Is this connection, no matter how spiritual it seems, leading you deeper within yourself or further away from yourself? The confusion is real. The doubt is cruel. Because somewhere, you still believe he will come back, that he will awaken, that he will understand everything you have already understood. You catch yourself imagining messages that never come, dreaming of reunions that do not happen. And day after day, your energy field depletes trying to sustain a connection that, in the physical plane, refuses to bloom. And the worst part is that you can't find anyone to share this pain with. No one understands what it is to love someone without having had an official relationship. No one comprehends what it is to feel your soul glued to another and yet see that person drift away as if nothing had happened. You try to move on, but everything in you is still tied to that absent presence. But there is something you need to know, even if it is hard to hear. The more you try to hold on to the thread that connects you to him, the more you become entangled in it. The more you distance yourself from yourself, and the more you push life into a delay that it no longer wants to carry. Letting go does not happen when love ends. It happens when the love for yourself awakens, when something greater inside you begins to whisper, "It's enough." When the tiredness of the soul asks for silence, asks for peace, asks for liberation. And perhaps that is the exact point where you find yourself now, on the border between attachment and surrender, between the fear of losing and the desire to finally reunite with yourself. You begin to realize that as divine as this connection may have been, it was also a school, a crossing, and that perhaps the purpose was not the happily ever after, but the awaken to who you came to be. This is not an easy choice. It is an emotional, energetic, spiritual crossing. And only those who live it know what it is to say goodbye to something that still pulses in the heart, but no longer finds reciprocity in the material world. But there is a hidden secret here. Something deep begins to move the moment you say, "I let go." Not as a resignation, but as a surrender. Not as abandonment, but as a recognition that true love does not demand imprisonment, does not demand waiting, does not demand suffering. And when you do this, something begins to align. When a woman decides to let go of her twin flame, this gesture is not just a rational choice. It is not an ego-driven movement, as many think. It is an internal earthquake, a silent collapse that happens when all attempts to keep hope alive are exhausted. But what seems like the end is, in fact, the beginning of a deep reconfiguration of the soul. Because it is not just a goodbye to the other, but a reunion with what has been forgotten within oneself. Most people, when hearing about twin flames, imagine an intense romantic story full of meetings and misunderstandings, but which ultimately culminates in the magical union of two halves of the same soul. But those who truly live this process know that it is everything but linear. It is as if the universe handed the feminine soul a spiritual mirror and said, "Look at everything you still need to heal. Look at everything you still project, idealize, idolize. Look at your own absence within yourself." And that is exactly what hurts so much. Because this connection, as divine as it may seem, comes to activate wounds that have been dormant for lifetimes. It comes to tear apart the comfort zone and expose the emotional holes that still exist. The ego, used to seeking control, approval, and certainty, collapses. It doesn't understand why such a strong love is not realized. It cannot accept that someone who felt the same now pretends they felt nothing. It wants answers, wants logic, wants guarantees. But the soul, it wants freedom. In this conflict between ego and soul, the woman finds herself lost. On the outside, she continues with life. She fulfills her responsibilities, wears her smile, responds to messages, maintains her routine. But on the inside, she is in ruins. It's as if a vital piece of her has been ripped away, as if nothing makes sense anymore. And this leads her to a dangerous point, completely abandoning herself while waiting for the other. And this is where the universe intervenes. There comes a moment when spirituality, with all its silent wisdom, begins to send clear signals. Signals that you didn't want to see before, but now emerge forcefully. Repeated situations, silences that stretch, feelings of stagnation, unexplained physical pains, blockages in areas that used to flow naturally. Everything starts to jam. Why? Because your soul has already understood, but you still insist on remaining where there is no longer any energy. And the universe does not work with the logic of deserving, but with frequency. When you cling to something that vibrates in fear, absence, waiting, you distance yourself from your own flow of abundance. And then life begins to signal that it's time to let go, to stop resisting, to allow the process to fulfill its purpose. The great spiritual revelation is this: separation, no matter how painful, is not punishment. It is preparation. The distancing from the twin flame is not a mistake, but an initiation, a deep calling for you to turn your eyes inward and see how far you have strayed from your own essence. And what seems like rejection is actually redirection. Yes, there is love there, but there are also lessons that can only be learned in silence, in distance, in absence. Many times, your soulmate distances not because they don't love you, but because they still cannot love themselves. And if you remain stuck in this cycle, trying to fix what isn't yours to fix, you become ill, you disintegrate, you diminish your light to fit into a dynamic that no longer sustains your growth. And it is at this point that the true leap occurs. When you understand that true love does not drag you down, it does not make you wait forever, it does not silence you. True love, even if silent, has a frequency of respect, care, and presence. And if this is not being manifested, then perhaps what you are feeling is more attachment than love, more neediness than connection. This is a revelation that hurts, but it is liberating, because from it, you begin to remember who you were before all of this, who you became trying to maintain this bond, and who you can be if you decide to let go. And here's something profound. The universe does not respond to desperation. It responds to vibration. And the moment you stop asking for it and start asking for yourself, everything begins to change. The energy moves, doors open, time reorganizes, because you have stepped out of the victim role and entered the field of creation. The woman who renounces her twin flame, not out of revenge, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. This woman begins to be reborn. And it is in this instant that everything, absolutely everything, begins to fall into place. When the woman decides to let go, something mysterious begins to happen. At first glance, it seems like everything is falling apart. She feels the emptiness, the absence of the presence that marked her days so much. Thoughts still try to bring back memories, moments, signs that once made her heart believe. But as days go by, a new sensation begins to emerge. It is not euphoria. It is not immediate relief, nor an exterior miracle. It is something much more subtle and profound. It is the beginning of healing. Healing never screams. It does not come with fanfare. It begins in silence. The moment the woman stops seeking outside and starts looking within, when she chooses, for the first time in a long time, to listen to her own soul instead of chasing answers that do not come. And it is in this silence that wisdom begins to manifest. The retreat is sacred. The woman who withdraws from the noise of the world, who distances herself from comparisons, who silences the advice of those who have never lived what she has lived, enters a deep spiritual field. She begins to feel her own energy, to perceive where she was giving too much, where she was abandoning herself. She starts to cleanse, to cut invisible ties, to return to others what is not hers, to pull back to herself everything that has always been rightfully hers: presence, dignity, wholeness. Many confuse this phase with weakness. They say she is withdrawn, distant, cold. But what no one sees is that, inside, she is building her own foundation, brick by brick. With each tear she embraces, a weight is lifted. With each memory she frees, a knot untangles. Each time she chooses herself, her energetic field strengthens. And it is here that the real rebalancing occurs. The woman who renounces her twin flame for self-love enters a process of energetic purification. She begins to vibrate at a different frequency. She stops being the one who begs and becomes the one who emanates. She stops being the one who waits and becomes the one who lives. She stops being the one who clings and becomes the one who surrenders. And this surrender is not an act of desperation, but of wisdom. She understands that she no longer needs to chase after anything, because what is hers by divine right will come, and what is not will be removed with lightness and grace. This is the stage of silent blossoming, the moment when, even while still feeling, she begins to smile for no reason, sleeping better, waking up with more lightness, noticing simple details of life that once went unnoticed. She starts to live not to wait, but to honor her own journey. She discovers forgotten pleasures, dormant passions, desires that were buried under the waiting for another. She rediscovers herself as a woman, as a soul, as a living presence in the world. The great spiritual wisdom lies in this, in recognizing that the reunion with another is only possible after the reunion with oneself. And if that reunion with the other does not happen, it is because the true purpose was precisely that, to bring you back inside. Every twin flame carries this sacred role, to reflect what needs to be restored in us. Sometimes the other soul does not awaken in this life, and that is okay, because what matters is what this journey has awakened in you. The healed woman holds no grudges. She understands that everything was necessary, that every silence from the other was a call for her to listen to herself, that every distancing was an opportunity to get closer to her own truth. She does not romanticize pain, but honors what it taught her. She does not expect a return because she knows that nothing that returns is more valuable than what she found within herself. This awakening is delicate but powerful. It is not the result of techniques or instant promises. It is the fruit of time, of inner listening, of silent faith. And when this woman emerges from this process, she is no longer the same. She has passed through the fire and was not burned. She went through the storm and did not drown. She learned to walk on her own internal waters. And it is at this point that life begins to respond differently. New people come closer. The body vibrates at a different frequency. Synchronicities return, but now with different messages. Opportunities arise, but she is no longer fooled by any promise. Now she knows the value of her energy, and she protects it as one protects something sacred, because it is sacred. She no longer needs to say that she has let go. Life itself takes care of showing it, because everything begins to flow. Everything begins to fall into place, not because the other returned, but because she returned to herself. The most important reunion of the journey is not with the twin flame, but with the self. And when this woman reaches this point, nothing can stop her. She becomes light in motion, and wherever she goes, her presence transforms everything. There comes a moment when the woman, after going through all the pain, the silence, the renunciation, and the purification, begins to feel something new sprouting within her. It is no longer longing. It is no longer anxiety. It is no longer that urgency to know where the other is, what they think, what they feel, or if they will ever return. This thirst gives way to something much deeper, a presence, a peace, a reunion. She begins to look at herself in the mirror with more respect, to recognize a strength in her own eyes, to realize that there is a woman who has crossed an emotional abyss and did not get lost, who fell and rose again, who loved and let go, who trusted her own light even when everything seemed dark. This is the encounter with the higher self. The higher self does not shout, does not demand, does not impose. It whispers, it guides, it inspires. And when the woman begins to listen to this voice, which is hers but also divine, she starts to access a wisdom that has always been within her, but which was silenced by projections, fears, and emotional needs. She stops looking outward for validation, recognition, approval, and begins to realize that everything she sought in the other was, in fact, a reflection of something that needed to be awakened within herself. Love has not been lost. It has simply changed direction. The energy that was once poured into the other is now redirected to her. And this does not make her selfish. It makes her centered, sovereign, present. She begins to choose better where to place her attention, her surrender, her words. She is no longer a woman begging for love, but a woman who emanates love, who vibrates love, who walks with love. And this vibration does not go unnoticed. The spiritual world recognizes this woman. Nature responds. Time adjusts. Relationships change. The body heals. Choices align. Because her field is now different. Before, she vibrated in waiting. Now she vibrates in presence. Before, she lived in function of what could happen. Now she lives in honor of what is happening within her. And this subtle change completely alters reality. The higher self does not need to convince anyone. It simply is. And the woman who reconnects with this essence stops seeking what is hidden. She no longer chases after. She no longer forces signs. She no longer lives in function of a connection that does not manifest clearly. She understands that if the other is not ready, she does not need to stop her life for that, because she is ready. And what is ready blossoms. What is whole attracts. What is aligned magnetizes. This magnetism that is born is different from anything she has ever known. It is not forced sensuality. It is not emotional manipulation. It is an energy that naturally emanates from someone who is at peace with herself. from someone who no longer needs to prove anything, not to herself, not to the other, not to the world. And here something even deeper happens. The woman begins to look at the history she lived with her twin flame with new eyes. There is no longer anger, nor demands, nor expectations. There is understanding. There is gratitude, because she realizes that if it were not for that encounter, she might never have awakened. She might have continued living a dormant life, repeating patterns, seeking love in the wrong places. But that encounter stirred everything. It shattered certainties. It broke structures. It opened portals. And in the midst of all this deconstruction, she found herself. Yes, love continues to exist, but now he is free. He doesn't cling, he doesn't charge, he doesn't paralyze. He inspires, he strengthens, he follows a new flow. Because true love doesn't end, it simply transforms. And what was once attachment is now light. What was once pain is now wisdom. What was once need is now fullness. The higher self doesn't live in the past. It inhabits the eternal now. And this woman, by embracing this awareness, understands that her life is no longer stagnant, that she is not waiting for anything, because she is living. She is creating, she is manifesting, and the more she aligns with her essence, the more everything around her aligns as well. And it is at this point in the journey that paradoxically, the energies begin to move around the old connection. The twin flame that was once distant, disconnected, may start to feel something different, because the bond between souls never dissolves. But now the frequency has changed, and what was once imbalance begins to transform into learning. What was absence becomes an internal call. What was silence becomes an echo. But here is the key. The woman awakens no longer dependent on this return. If it comes, it will come through vibrational affinity, not from need, not from waiting, not from attachment. It will come because both souls will have healed enough to walk together without losing themselves. And if it doesn't come, she moves on in peace. Because what she was seeking in that other person now lives within her. This is true personal power, spiritual sovereignty, the magnetism of the soul that has returned to occupy its place. She is no longer the same. She has become. And now that you've made it this far, take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a moment and feel what is happening inside you. Don't rush to leave this state. Don't try to understand everything with your mind. Just feel. Because something deep, even though silent, is reorganizing within your field. There is a wisdom that can only emerge after the crossing. And if you have listened to every word up to this point, it is because your soul was ready. Ready to welcome, to let go, to rise again, ready to remember who she is. The truth is that you have never been alone. Each tear, each silence, each unanswered prayer has been heard. Maybe not in the way you expected, but in the way you needed. Spirituality does not abandon anyone, but sometimes it allows pain to teach us what comfort would not have the courage to show. Sometimes it is necessary to lose the ground to realize that the strength that supports you does not come from outside. It comes from within. And yes, love continues to exist, but now it has another form, another rhythm, another destiny. Now it doesn't imprison you. It expands you. It doesn't limit you. It liberates you, because you have understood that to love is not to wait. It is to become. It is to bloom regardless of the season, regardless of the presence of another. Because you are not the winter of absence. You are the sun that warms your own soul. So if you feel that this message spoke directly to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe now to this channel and share this video with other women who are also going through the silence of renunciation. Perhaps, for many of them, this message is what they needed to rise again. Together, we are many. Together, we heal. Together, we awaken the world. And I want to invite you to leave here in the comments a phrase that represents your current moment. It can be a word, a confession, a choice, a symbol. Write what your soul is experiencing right now. This sharing is sacred, because when a woman expresses herself truthfully, She paves the way for others to do the same. And who knows, your phrase might be exactly the sign that another soul is waiting for to awaken. You have made it this far because your soul thirsts for truth, because something within you no longer wants to live half-heartedly. And now that you understand that renunciation is not an end, but a new beginning, everything changes. Everything repositions itself. Everything begins to align. The woman who lets go is not giving up. She is trusting. She is responding to a higher calling. And the more she surrenders, the more life reveals itself. What seemed chaos reveals order. What seemed loss reveals purpose. What seemed loneliness reveals presence. Because when a woman renounces her twin flame, not out of pain, but out of wisdom, everything begins to fall into place. And I close this video with a phrase that carries the potency of this awakening. When you stop waiting for someone, life begins to come to you. Now tell me, are you ready to let life come?